Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, M.R. James. Part 1, St. Bertrand de Comminges, is a decayed town on the spurs of the Pyrenees, not very far from Toulouse, and still nearer to Bagnères-de-Luchon. It was the site of a bishopric until the Revolution, and has a cathedral which is visited by a certain number of tourists. In the spring of 1883, an Englishman arrived at this old-world place. I can hardly dignify it with the name of city, for there are not 1,000 inhabitants. He was a Cambridge man who had come specially from Toulouse to see St. Bertrand's church, and had left 2 friends, who were less keen archaeologists than himself, in their hotel at Toulouse, under promise to join him on the following morning. Half an hour at the church would satisfy them, and all 3 could then pursue their journey in the direction of Auch. But our Englishman had come early on the day in question, and proposed to himself to fill a notebook, and to use several dozens of plates in the process of describing and photographing every corner of the wonderful church that dominates the little hill of Comminges. To carry out this design satisfactorily, it was necessary to monopolize the verger of the church for the day. The verger, or sacristan as I prefer to call him, inaccurate though the title may be, was accordingly sent for by the somewhat brusque landlady of the Chapeau Rouge. When he came, the Englishman found him an unexpectedly interesting object of study. It was not the personal appearance of the little, dry, wizened old man that attracted attention. He resembled dozens of other church guardians in France. Rather, it was the curious, furtive, or perhaps hunted, air that surrounded him. He was perpetually glancing over his shoulder. The muscles of his back and shoulders seemed drawn tight in continual nervous expectation, as though he expected at any moment to feel himself seized by an unseen pursuer. The Englishman hardly knew whether to consider him a man haunted by some fixed delusion, or oppressed by a guilty conscience, or merely an unbearably henpecked husband. The probabilities certainly favoured the last explanation, yet the impression remained that of a man pursued by something far more formidable than even the fiercest of wives. Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 2. Once, Dennistoun said to me, I could have sworn I heard a thin metallic voice laughing high up in the tower. I darted an inquiring glance at my sacristan. He was white to the lips. It is he, that is, it is no one, the door is locked, was all he said, and we looked at each other for a full minute. Another little incident puzzled Dennistoun a good deal. He was examining a large dark picture that hangs behind the altar, one of a series illustrating the miracles of St. Bertrand. The composition of the picture is well nigh indecipherable, but there is a Latin legend below which runs thus: Qualiter Sanctus Bertrandus liberavit hominem, quem diabolus diu volebat strangulare. How St. Bertrand delivered a man whom the devil long sought to strangle. Dennistoun was turning to the sacristan with a smile and a jocular remark of some sort on his lips. But he was confounded to see the old man on his knees, gazing at the picture with the eye of a suppliant in agony. His hands were tightly clasped. A rain of tears streamed down his cheeks. Dennistoun naturally pretended to have noticed nothing, but the question would not leave his mind. Why should a daub of this kind affect anyone so strongly? He seemed to himself to be getting some sort of clue to the reason of the strange look that had been puzzling him all day. The man must be a monomaniac. But what was his monomania? It was nearly 5 o'clock. The short day was drawing in. The church began to fill with shadows. Meanwhile, the curious noises, the muffled footfalls, and the distant talking voices that had been perceptible all day seemed, perhaps because of the fading light and the quickened sense of hearing, to become more frequent and more insistent. The sacristan began, for the first time, to show signs of hurry and impatience. He heaved a sigh of relief when camera and notebook were finally packed away. Hurriedly, he beckoned Dennistoun towards the western door beneath the tower. It was time to ring the Angelus. A few pulls at the reluctant rope, and the great bell, Bertrand, high in the tower, began to speak. Its voice swung up among the pines, and down into the valleys loud with mountain streams, calling the dwellers upon those lonely hills to remember and repeat the salutation of the angel to her whom he called blessed among women. With that, a profound quiet seemed, for the first time that day, to fall upon the little town, and Dennistoun and the sacristan went out of the church. On the doorstep they fell into conversation. Monsieur seemed to interest himself in the old choir books in the sacristy. Undoubtedly, I was going to ask you if there were a library in the town. No, monsieur. Perhaps there used to be one belonging to the chapter, but it is now such a small place. Here came a strange pause of irresolution. Then, with a sort of plunge, he went on. But if monsieur is amateur de vieux livres, I have at home something that might interest him. It is not 100 yards. At once, all Dennistoun's cherished dreams of finding priceless manuscripts in untrodden corners of France flashed into life, only to die away again the next moment. It was probably a stupid missal of Plantin's printing about 1580. Where was the likelihood that a place so near Toulouse had not been ransacked long ago by collectors? However, it would be foolish not to go. He would reproach himself forever if he refused. So they set off. On the way, the curious hesitation, followed by the sudden determination of the sacristan, returned to Dennistoun's mind. For a moment, rather shamefacedly, he wondered whether he was being lured into some lonely corner, to be robbed or murdered, as a supposed wealthy Englishman. To guard against such an unlikely possibility, he contrived to begin talking with his guide, and, rather clumsily, mentioned that 2 friends were expected to join him early the following morning. To his surprise, the announcement seemed to relieve the sacristan immediately. "That is well," he said quite brightly. "That is very well. Monsieur will travel in company with his friends. They will always be near him. It is a good thing to travel thus in company. Sometimes." The last word seemed almost an afterthought, and with it, the poor little man relapsed once more into gloom. Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 3. They were soon at the house. It was rather larger than its neighbours, stone-built, with a shield carved over the door. The shield was that of Alberic de Molion, a collateral descendant, Dennistoun tells me, of Bishop John de Molion. This Alberic had been a Canon of Comminges from 1680 to 1701. The upper windows of the house were boarded up, and the whole place bore, as did the rest of Comminges, the unmistakable aspect of decaying age. Arrived upon the doorstep, the sacristan paused. "Perhaps," he said, "perhaps, after all, monsieur has not the time." "Not at all. Lots of time. Nothing to do until tomorrow. Let us see what it is you have got." The door opened. A face looked out. It was far younger than the sacristan's, yet it bore something of the same troubled expression. Only here, it seemed less the mark of fear for personal safety than of anxious concern for someone else. Plainly, it was the face of the sacristan's daughter. Apart from that shadow of anxiety, she was a handsome girl. She brightened considerably on seeing that her father was accompanied by an able-bodied stranger. A few words passed between them. Dennistoun caught only these "Ambisto," spoken by the sacristan. "He was laughing in the church," the girl answered with nothing except a look of unmistakable terror. A moment later, they found themselves in the sitting room. It was a small, lofty chamber, with a stone floor, filled with shifting shadows cast by a wood fire, flickering upon the great hearth. Something of the character of an oratory was given to the room by a tall crucifix, which reached almost to the ceiling. The figure upon it was painted in natural colours. The cross itself was black. Beneath it stood an old and solid chest. A lamp was brought. Chairs were placed. Then the sacristan crossed to the chest. With increasing excitement and, Dennistoun thought, increasing nervousness, he drew out a large book, wrapped in a white cloth, upon which a cross had been roughly embroidered in red thread, even before the wrapping had been removed. Dennistoun found himself interested by its size and shape. Too large for a missile, he thought, and not the shape of an antiphoner. Perhaps, after all, it may be something good. The next moment, the book lay open before him, and Dennistoun realized that he had at last found something, far better than merely good. Before him rested a large folio, bound, perhaps, in the late 17th century, with the arms of Canon Alberic de Comminges stamped in gold upon the covers. There were perhaps 150 leaves of paper. Upon almost every one, a leaf from an illuminated manuscript had been carefully mounted. Such a collection Dennistoun had hardly dreamed of, even in his wildest imaginings. Here were 10 leaves from a copy of Genesis, illustrated with pictures, which could not be later than the year AD 700. Further on, there appeared a complete series of illustrations from an English Psalter, of the finest work the 13th century could produce, and perhaps finest of all, there were 20 leaves of uncial Latin writing, which, from a few scattered words alone, Dennistoun recognized as belonging to some very early and entirely unknown patristic treatise. Could it possibly be a fragment of the lost work of Papias, on the words of our Lord, known to have existed as late as the 12th century at Nîmes, whatever it proved to be? His mind was already made up. That book must return to Cambridge with him, even if it meant drawing every penny from his bank and remaining at St. Bertrand until the money arrived. He glanced up at the sacristan, hoping his face might reveal whether the book was for sale. The old man was pale. His lips were trembling. Then he spoke. "If Monsieur will turn on to the end." Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 4. So Monsieur turned on, meeting new treasures at every rise of a leaf, and at the end of the book he came upon 2 sheets of paper, of much more recent date than anything he had yet seen, which puzzled him considerably. They must be contemporary, he decided, with the unprincipled Canon Alberic, who had doubtless plundered the chapter library of St. Bertrand to form this priceless scrapbook. On the first of the paper sheets was a plan, carefully drawn and instantly recognizable by a person who knew the ground, of the south aisle and cloisters of St. Bertrand's. There were curious signs looking like planetary symbols, and a few Hebrew words in the corners. And in the northwest angle of the cloister was a cross drawn in gold paint. Below the plan were some lines of writing in Latin, which ran thus: Responsa duodecim, mensis decembris, millesimo sexcentis nonaginta quatuor. Interrogatum est inveniamne, responsum est invenies, viamne dives, fies, vivamne invidendus, vivs, moriane in lecto meo, ita. Answers of the 12th of December, 1694. It was asked, shall I find it? Answer, thou shalt. Shall I become rich? Thou wilt. Shall I live an object of envy? Thou wilt. Shall I die in my bed? Thou wilt. A good specimen of the treasure hunter's record. Quite reminds one of Mr. Minor Canon Quatremin in Old St. Paul's, was Dennistoun's comment, and he turned the leaf. What he then saw impressed him, as he has often told me, more than he could have conceived any drawing or picture capable of impressing him. And, though the drawing he saw is no longer in existence, there is a photograph of it, which I possess, and which fully bears out that statement. The picture in question was a sepia drawing of the end of the 17th century, representing, one would say, at first sight, a biblical scene. For the architecture, the picture represented an interior, and the figures had that semi-classical flavour about them which the artists of 200 years ago thought appropriate to illustrations of the Bible. On the right was a king on his throne, the throne elevated on 12 steps, a canopy overhead, soldiers on either side, evidently King Solomon. He was bending forward with outstretched sceptre, in attitude of command. His face expressed horror and disgust, yet there was in it also the mark of imperious command and confident power. The left half of the picture was the strangest, however, the interest plainly centered there. On the pavement before the throne were grouped 4 soldiers, surrounding a crouching figure which must be described in a moment. A 5th soldier lay dead upon the pavement, his neck distorted, and his eyeballs starting from his head. The 4 surrounding guards were looking at the king. In their faces the sentiment of horror was intensified. They seemed, in fact, only restrained from flight by their implicit trust in their master. All this terror was plainly excited by the being that crouched in their midst. Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 5. I entirely despair of conveying by any words the impression which this figure makes upon anyone who looks at it. I recollect once showing the photograph of the drawing to a lecturer on morphology, a person of, I was going to say, abnormally sane and unimaginative habits of mind. He absolutely refused to be alone for the rest of that evening, and he told me afterwards that for many nights he had not dared to put out his light before going to sleep. However, the main traits of the figure I can at least indicate. At first you saw only a mass of coarse, matted black hair. Presently it was seen that this covered a body of fearful thinness, almost a skeleton, but with the muscles standing out like wires. The hands were of a dusky pallor, covered, like the body, with long, coarse hairs, and hideously taloned. The eyes, touched in with a burning yellow, had intensely black pupils, and were fixed upon the throned king with a look of beast-like hate. Imagine one of the awful bird-catching spiders of South America translated into human form, and endowed with intelligence just less than human, and you will have some faint conception of the terror inspired by the appalling effigy. One remark is universally made by those to whom I have shown the picture. It was drawn from the life. As soon as the first shock of his irresistible fright had subsided, Dennistoun stole a look at his hosts. The sacristan's hands were pressed upon his eyes. His daughter, looking up at the cross on the wall, was telling her beads feverishly. At last the question was asked, "Is this book for sale?" There was the same hesitation, the same plunge of determination that he had noticed before, and then came the welcome answer, "If monsieur pleases." "How much do you ask for it?" "I will take 250 francs. This was confounding. Even a collector's conscience is sometimes stirred, and Dennistoun's conscience was tenderer than a collector's. "My good man," he said again and again, "your book is worth far more than 250 francs, I assure you. Far more." But the answer did not vary. "I will take 250 francs, not more." There was really no possibility of refusing such a chance. The money was paid, the receipt signed, and a glass of wine drunk over the transaction. Then the sacristan seemed to become a new man. He stood upright. He ceased to throw those suspicious glances behind him. He actually laughed, or tried to laugh. Dennistoun rose to go. Part 6. "I shall have the honour of accompanying monsieur to his hotel?" said the sacristan. "Oh no, thanks. It isn't 100 yards. I know the way perfectly, and there is a moon." The offer was pressed 3 or 4 times, and refused as often. "Then monsieur will summon me, if he finds occasion. He will keep the middle of the road, the sides are so rough." Certainly, said Dennistoun, who was impatient to examine his prize by himself, and he stepped out into the passage with his book under his arm. Here he was met by the daughter. She, it appeared, was anxious to do a little business on her own account, perhaps like Gehazi, to take somewhat from the foreigner whom her father had spared. A silver crucifix and chain for the neck. Monsieur would perhaps be good enough to accept it. Well, really, Dennistoun hadn't much use for these things. What did mademoiselle want for it? Nothing in the world. Monsieur is more than welcome to it. The tone in which this and much more was said was unmistakably genuine, so that Dennistoun was reduced to profuse thanks and submitted to have the chain put round his neck. It really seemed as if he had rendered the father and daughter some service which they hardly knew how to repay. As he set off with his book, they stood at the door looking after him, and they were still looking when he waved them a last good night from the steps of the Chapeau Rouge. Dinner was over, and Dennistoun was in his bedroom, shut up alone with his acquisition. The landlady had manifested a particular interest in him since he had told her that he had paid a visit to the sacristan and bought an old book from him. He thought, too, that he had heard a hurried dialogue between her and the said sacristan in the passage outside the salle à manger. Some words to the effect that Pierre and Bertrand would be sleeping in the house had closed the conversation. All this time, a growing feeling of discomfort had been creeping over him. Nervous reaction, perhaps, after the delight of his discovery. Whatever it was, it resulted in a conviction that there was someone behind him, and that he was far more comfortable with his back to the wall. Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 7. All this, of course, weighed light in the balance as against the obvious value of the collection he had acquired. And now, as I said, he was alone in his bedroom, taking stock of Canon Alberic's treasures, in which every moment revealed something more charming. "Bless Canon Alberic," said Dennistoun, who had an inveterate habit of talking to himself. "I wonder where he is now. Dear me, I wish that landlady would learn to laugh in a more cheering manner. It makes one feel as if there was someone dead in the house. Half a pipe more, did you say? I think perhaps you're right. I wonder what that crucifix is that the young woman insisted on giving me. Last century, I suppose. Yes, probably. It is rather a nuisance of a thing to have round one's neck, just too heavy. Most likely her father has been wearing it for years. I think I might give it a clean up before I put it away." He had taken the crucifix off and laid it on the table when his attention was caught by an object lying on the red cloth just by his left elbow. 2 or 3 ideas of what it might be flitted through his brain with their own incalculable quickness. A pen wiper? No, no such thing in the house. A rat? No, too black. A large spider? I trust to goodness not. No. Good God, a hand! Like the hand in that picture. In another infinitesimal flash he had taken it in. Pale, dusky skin, covering nothing but bones and tendons of appalling strength. Coarse black hairs, longer than ever, grew on a human hand. Nails rising from the ends of the fingers and curving sharply down and forward, grey, horny, and wrinkled. He flew out of his chair with deadly, inconceivable terror clutching at his heart. The shape, whose left hand rested on the table, was rising to a standing posture behind his seat, its right hand crooked above his scalp. There was black and tattered drapery about it. The coarse hair covered it, as in the drawing. The lower jaw was thin, what can I call it? Shallow, like a beast's. Teeth showed behind the black lips. There was no nose. The eyes of a fiery yellow, against which the pupils showed black and intense, and the exulting hate and thirst to destroy life which shone there, were the most horrifying features in the whole vision. There was intelligence of a kind in them, intelligence beyond that of a beast, below that of a man. Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 8. The feelings which this horror stirred in Dennistoun were the intensest physical fear and the most profound mental loathing. What did he do? What could he do? He has never been quite certain what words he said, but he knows that he spoke, that he grasped blindly at the silver crucifix, that he was conscious of a movement towards him on the part of the demon, and that he screamed with the voice of an animal in hideous pain. Pierre and Bertrand, the 2 sturdy little serving men, who rushed in, saw nothing, but felt themselves thrust aside by something that passed out between them, and found Dennistoun in a swoon. They sat up with him that night, and his 2 friends were at St. Bertrand by 9 o'clock next morning. He himself, though still shaken and nervous, was almost himself by that time, and his story found credence with them, though not until they had seen the drawing and talked with the sacristan. Almost at dawn the little man had come to the inn on some pretence, and had listened with the deepest interest to the story retailed by the landlady. He showed no surprise. "It is he! It is he! I have seen him myself," was his only comment. To every further question He returned but one reply, "Deux fois je l'ai vu, mille fois je l'ai senti." He would tell them nothing of the provenance of the book, nor any details of his experiences. "I shall soon sleep, and my rest will be sweet. Why should you trouble me?" he said. He died that summer. His daughter married and settled at Saint-Papoul. She never understood the circumstances of her father's obsession. We shall never know what he or Canon Alberic de Comminges suffered. At the back of that fateful drawing were some lines of writing which may be supposed to throw light on the situation. Contradictio Salomonis cum demonium nocturno, Albericus de Mauleone delineavit, qui Deus in adiutorium, ps qui habita, sancte Bertrande demoniorum effugator, intercede pro me miserrimo. Primum vidi nocte 12 decembris 1600, nonaginta quatuor, videbo mox ultimum. Peccavi et passus sum, plura aduc passurus. Decembris viginti 9, 1701. Canon Alberic's Scrapbook, Part 9. The inscription may be translated thus: The Dispute of Solomon with a Demon of the Night, drawn by Alberic de Comminges. Vivai, O Lord, make haste to help me. Psalm. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High, Saint Bertrand, who puttest devils to flight, pray for me, most miserable of men. I first saw it on the night of the 12th of December, 1694. Soon I shall see it for the last time. I have sinned and suffered, and have more yet to suffer. December the 29th, 1701. The Gallia Christiana gives the date of the canon's death as December the 31st, 1701, in bed of a sudden seizure. Details of this kind are not common in the great work of the Samathani. I have never quite understood what was Dennistoun's view of the events I have narrated. He quoted to me once a text from Ecclesiasticus. Some spirits there be that are created for vengeance, and in their fury lay on sore strokes. On another occasion he said, Isaiah was a very sensible man. Doesn't he say something about night monsters living in the ruins of Babylon? These things are rather beyond us at present. Another confidence of his impressed me rather, and I sympathized with it. We had been last year to Comminges to see Canon Alberic's tomb. It is a great marble erection, with an effigy of the canon in a large wig and soutane, and an elaborate eulogy of his learning below. I saw Dennistoun talking for some time with the vicar of St. Bertrand's, and as we drove away he said to me, I hope it isn't wrong. You know I am a Presbyterian, but I believe there will be saying of Mass and singing of dirges for Alberic de Comminges' rest. Then he added, with a touch of the Northern British in his tone, I had no notion they came so dear. The book is in the Wentworth collection at Cambridge. The drawing was photographed, and then burnt by Dennistoun, on the day he left Comminges after his first visit.